What would you do if your partner threatened to end their life every single time you tried to leave? I met Elena during my senior year of college. She was in one of my psychology lectures, sitting a couple rows ahead of me, and I noticed her because she laughed at something the professor said that wasn't even that funny. But it was the kind of laugh that made you want to hear it again, loud and uninhibited and completely unself-conscious. We started talking after class one day. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into late-night walks around campus, and within a few months, we were pretty much inseparable. She was warm and funny and ridiculously affectionate. Every morning, I'd wake up to a text from her, some goofy meme or a random thought she'd had in the shower. When I came home from class, she'd practically tackle me at the door like I'd been gone for weeks instead of hours. She was studying graphic design back then, and she was genuinely talented. I'm not just saying that because I loved her. Her sketches were detailed and imaginative. Her digital work had this whimsical quality that made you stop and stare. I used to tell her she could do it professionally, that she had more skill than half the people I saw on social media. And she'd blush and wave me off and say she was just messing around. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It started small. She'd miss a class here and there, then a few more. Then she stopped going altogether. She told me she just needed a break, that the program was too rigid and uninspired, that she'd figure out her next step after the semester ended. I believed her. I mean, why wouldn't I? Everyone gets burnt out sometimes. She just needed to recharge, except the break never ended. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. And the girl I'd met in that lecture hall started to disappear piece by piece. She stopped sketching. Her tablet sat on the nightstand collecting dust. Her portfolio got shoved into the back of the closet. She spent most of her days in bed, scrolling through social media with this hollow look in her eyes that I'd later learned to recognize as depression. But at the time, I just thought she was going through a rough patch. I was working full-time by then as a physical therapy aide at a busy clinic about 40 minutes from our apartment. The job was brutal. Long shifts, physically demanding patients, and a never-ending pile of paperwork that seemed to reproduce overnight. Some days I'd leave work feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, my back aching and my brain completely fried. And I'd come home to her in that same bed, same position, same empty takeout containers on the nightstand, same excuse. I was just resting, or I didn't feel good today, or I was going to get up, but then I just didn't. I tried to be understanding. I really did. Depression is real, and it's cruel, and it doesn't care about your plans or your potential. So I offered to help in whatever way I could. I'd sit beside her and scroll through job listings on my phone, reading them aloud and asking if any sounded interesting. She'd nod vaguely, say she'd apply, and then never do it. I'd suggest community college courses in subjects she used to love, art history, creative writing, even just a photography class to get her out of the apartment. She'd say it sounded nice, maybe, but she wasn't ready. I'd offer to cook together on weekends, make a whole thing of it, maybe invite some friends over. She'd decline, saying she didn't have the energy to socialize. And somehow, without really noticing, I became her caretaker, her cook, her maid, her emotional support system, her financial provider, her everything. And the more I gave, the less she gave back. The resentment grew slowly, quietly. Not in dramatic arguments or big explosive fights, but in the small, petty thoughts I'd have on my commute home. What did she do today? Probably nothing. Again, will dinner be ready? No, of course not. Will she even be dressed? I hated those thoughts. I hated that I had them. I told myself I was being selfish and impatient and unsupportive, that real partners don't keep score, that love means showing up even when it's hard. But love also means not losing yourself in someone else's darkness. And I was disappearing. The night everything finally cracked was a Thursday. I remember that because Thursdays were always the worst shifts at the clinic, understaffed, overbooked, and filled with patients who needed more than I could give. I'd spent the entire day running between exam rooms with no time for lunch or even a real bathroom break. I got home around 7:30, exhausted and hungry and smelling like industrial hand sanitizer, and there she was, in bed. Same position as when I'd left that morning, same takeout containers, same unwashed hair. She looked up at me when I walked in and offered this sleepy little smile. "Hey, babe, how was work?" Something inside me just snapped. I don't remember exactly what I said. I know it was loud. I know I used words I shouldn't have, words like pathetic and disgusting, and I can't do this anymore. I know she started crying, and then she threw something at me, first a pillow, then her phone, then a water bottle that hit me square in the chest. I didn't react. I just stood there staring at her, realizing in that moment that this wasn't a one-time thing. It had happened before, Not often, but enough times that I'd lost count. And every single time, I'd convinced myself it wasn't a big deal, that she was just frustrated, that she didn't mean it, but it was a big deal. It had always been a big deal. I just hadn't been willing to see it. I told her I was done, that I couldn't do this anymore, that I was leaving. And then she started screaming. Not angry screaming, panicked screaming. The kind of screaming that comes from someone who's terrified of being alone. She told me she had no one else. No family who hadn't already given up on her. No friends who still answered her calls. No money, no skills, no future. If I left, she'd have nothing. Then she ran to the kitchen. I knew what was coming before I saw it. She grabbed a knife from the block and held it to her wrist. Her eyes were wild, her breath was ragged, and her hands were shaking so badly, I was scared she'd accidentally cut herself just from the tremor. "Don't you dare leave me like this," she said. I didn't call her bluff. I've worked with patients in crisis. I've seen what happens when someone follows through on those threats. The blood, the paramedics, the frantic phone calls to family, the guilt that stays with you forever. I wasn't going to let that be her. I wasn't going to live with that. So I walked over, took the knife out of her hand, and told her I'd stay. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing and apologizing and promising it would never happen again. I held her and said nothing, because I knew it would happen again, and I knew I was making a promise I couldn't keep. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay on the couch. I'd started sleeping there on nights when I couldn't bear to be in the same room as her, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about what I was going to do. Leaving wasn't an option, not yet. Not with her in this state. She'd threatened to hurt herself once, and she'd do it again if I walked out the door. But staying wasn't an option either, not permanently. I was drowning, and she was the anchor pulling me under. I needed a middle ground. The next evening, I came home from work and didn't change out of my scrubs. I stood in the middle of the living room and told her we needed to talk. She was in a good mood, laughing, bouncing on the bed like a kid, completely oblivious to the weight I was carrying. She kept asking if I was okay, if I was hungry, if she could make me something. A gesture she'd never actually follow through on, but she offered it anyway. I didn't respond. I just stood there. Eventually, she stopped smiling. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I need to be honest with you," I said, "and I need you to listen without interrupting." She nodded. I told her I was tired. Exhausted, actually. I told her that for the past 2 years I'd been carrying both of us, and I couldn't do it anymore. I told her I'd lost something important, the part of myself that believed she could change, that believed we had a future together. I told her I didn't love her the way I used to. She started crying quietly, which was somehow worse than the loud crying. She asked why I hadn't told her sooner, why I'd let it get this bad without saying something. "I did tell you," I said. "I told you to find a job. I told you to go back to school. I told you to find a hobby, cook dinner, just get out of bed. You never listened. You never took me seriously." She said she understood. She apologized. She promised she'd change. I'd heard those promises before. But this time she asked if there was anything she could do to make me stay, anything at all. "1 month," I said. "Give me 1 month where you actually show me you can be a partner. Not a dependent, not a patient, a partner. Get a job, find something to care about. I'll meet you halfway if you do that." She nodded frantically. Okay, I can do that? "I'm not promising my feelings will come back," I said. "I'm just promising I'll give you a fair shot." She didn't care. She was just relieved to have another chance. I slept on the couch again that night, and the night after, and every night for the next few weeks, because I knew that even if she changed, even if she did everything right, the chances of me falling back in love with her were close to zero. But she needed that deadline. She needed something to hold on to while she figured out her next move. And I needed to know I'd done everything I could. The first week was manic. Elena threw herself into improvement like it was a full-time job. She researched hobbies, applied to jobs, and cooked dinner every single night. Sometimes meals I'd never even requested, just to prove she could. She found an old camera in a closet, something she'd bought years ago and never used, and started taking photos around the city. She spent hours editing them, showing me the results, asking for feedback. She applied to every retail and office job she could find. She made spreadsheets of her applications. She showed me her phone every night, scrolling through the confirmation emails to prove she wasn't lying. She was attentive in a way she'd never been before. Constant questions. "How was your day? Are you okay? Do you need anything?" She'd text me during my shifts, and when I came home, she'd wrap her arms around me and ask if I wanted to go out, go for a walk, go anywhere. It was exhausting. Not because she was doing something wrong, she was doing exactly what I'd asked, but because it all felt like performance, like she was acting out a script she'd read somewhere, doing all the right things without actually understanding why I'd needed them in the first place. My coworkers noticed. There were two women at the clinic I'd grown close to over the years, Kelly and Marissa. They were both older than me, both married, both refreshingly blunt about their own relationships. I'd confided in them about Elena's struggles, and they'd always been supportive without being judgmental. But now they were worried. "She's love-bombing you," Kelly said one afternoon in the break room. "I've seen this before. It's textbook. She's going to burn herself out and then blame you when it doesn't work." "She's not manipulative," I said. "She's just desperate." "She's desperate and manipulative," Marissa said. "Those aren't mutually exclusive. She's doing just enough to keep you from leaving. And as soon as you relax, she'll go right back to the way she was." They offered to let me stay with them. Just a few nights, to get some distance and clear my head. I declined. I'd made a promise to meet Elena halfway, and walking out would break that promise. But they were right about the burnout. By the second week, the manic energy had faded. Elena was still trying, still applying to jobs, still taking photos, but she seemed tired, hollow, like she was running on fumes. We went out to the city one weekend. I'd promised her we'd spend the whole day together, and I kept my word even though I'd worked a double shift the day before and was running on caffeine and spite. She took photos of everything: street lamp, pigeon, strangers walking past. She asked me to pose for a few, and I did, forcing a smile I didn't feel. She noticed. "You're not happy," she said. "I'm tired," I said. "That's all." She didn't believe me. The third day of that week was the worst. I woke up late and rushed out the door without saying goodbye. I had a decent shift, nothing too stressful, a few patients who made me laugh, and after work I joined Kelly and Marissa for dinner at a bar near the clinic. I had a couple of beers. We talked about work, about TV shows, about nothing important. For a few hours I felt almost normal. Then I came home. She was sitting in the dark on the couch, staring at nothing. "Where were you?" she asked. "Out with friends," I said. "We grabbed dinner." "Your coworkers?" "Yeah." "You were drinking?" "Yeah." She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Have your feelings changed since we made the deal?" I hesitated. "That was my mistake. I appreciate what you're doing," I said. "I see the effort, but I can't give you an answer yet. I need more time." "You're never going to give me an answer," she said, "because you already know the answer." "That's not true." "Yes, it is." Her voice was shaking. "I've been doing everything you asked. Everything. I'm applying for jobs, I'm taking photos, I'm cooking, I'm trying so hard I can barely breathe, and you still look at me like I'm nothing." I didn't know what to say, because she was right. "I can't force my feelings," I said. "I'm trying, but it's not something I can control." She started crying, not quiet tears, but ugly, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. She told me she didn't know how much more she could give, that she was already empty, that she'd already given me everything and it wasn't enough. Then she said the words I'd been dreading since we started this whole thing. "If you leave," she said, "I have nothing. No one. No reason. I don't want to exist in a world where you're not in it." I froze. She got up and walked toward the kitchen. I followed her, already knowing what she was going to do. She grabbed a pair of scissors from a drawer and held them to her wrist. "Don't," I said. She was screaming now. "Why shouldn't I? You don't love me. You don't care. And I have nothing else." "Put the scissors down," I said. "Please. We can talk about this. Dob leaves talk." "You don't want to talk. You just want to leave. So leave. I'll be fine." "I won't be fine, but that's not your problem, right?" It was manipulative. Textbook. Kelly and Marissa would have seen right through it, but I was terrified. Not because I believed she'd actually do it. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew she was bluffing. But because if I ignored it and she followed through, I would never forgive myself. I talked her down, took the scissors out of her hand, held her while she sobbed. She locked herself in the bedroom after that and refused to come out for 3 days. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat on the couch and waited. When she finally emerged, she was different, calm, quiet, exhausted. She apologized for everything, the outbursts, the threats, the emotional manipulation. She said she'd been in a dark place and had acted out of fear. "I'm scared," she said. "I'm scared of losing you. And I'm scared that if I lose you, I don't have a reason to keep going." I sat her down on the couch and took a deep breath. "Here's the truth," I said. "I don't love you anymore. I haven't for a long time, and no amount of effort on your part is going to bring that back." She started crying again, but it was different this time, quieter, more resigned. "I'm not leaving you with nothing," I said. "I'll give you 2 months. You can stay here, find a job, figure out your next step. I'll help with rent. I'll give you a fair chance to get on your feet. But you're done." "I'm done," she nodded, slowly, like she was trying to accept something that physically hurt. "Okay," she said. "Okay. It was the most mature response she'd given me in years. The next few weeks were awkward. Elena kept to herself mostly, staying in the bedroom when she wasn't out looking for work. She found a part-time job at a discount store eventually, just stocking shelves and folding clothes, but it was enough to give her some structure. We didn't talk much. There was a strange, heavy silence in the apartment, the kind that makes you feel like you're walking on glass. I felt free for the first time in years, guilty, but free. I started going out more often with Kelly and Marissa, just dinner, sometimes drinks. I started sleeping better. I started feeling like myself again. Then I got sick. I woke up one morning with a fever and a cough that wouldn't stop. By the afternoon, I was lightheaded and struggling to breathe. Pneumonia. The doctor said it would take 2 weeks to recover, maybe longer. I was bedridden, useless, dependent, and she was the only one who could take care of me. I hated it. Not because she was bad at it. She wasn't. She made me soup, brought me water, checked my temperature, made sure I was breathing okay. She even took a few days off work to stay with me when I was at my worst. But I hated the dependency. I hated being the one who needed help. And I hated that I didn't feel anything. Not love, not gratitude, not affection. She was kind. She was caring. She was doing everything right. And I still couldn't love her back. We started talking more during those 2 weeks. Maybe because there was nothing else to do. Maybe because she'd finally stopped trying to be perfect and just started being herself. She talked about her job, her coworkers, the customers she saw every day. She talked about her photos, how she was getting better, how she wanted to take a class eventually. She even made me laugh a few times. We talked the way we used to, back when we were just friends. But the barrier stayed there. My lease ended in September. I'd been planning to move out for months, and now the time had finally come. I packed my bags on the last Saturday. She watched me from the couch, quiet and sad. "Are you really going?" she asked. "Yeah. Can I say something?" I paused. "You were right," she said. "About everything. I didn't try hard enough. I used you. I manipulated you. I was a terrible partner. I didn't say anything. I don't blame you for leaving," she said. "I don't hate you for leaving. I hate myself for making you leave." Her voice cracked. "I just wish you could have loved me the way I loved you." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, and then she hit me. I didn't see it coming. 1 second we were standing apart, the next she'd lunged forward and slapped me across the face. She froze. I froze. "I'm sorry," she said. I'm sorry. I walked out the door. I sent her a message that night. "I'm not pressing charges, but don't contact me again. Get help. Move on. I wish you well." She didn't reply. I moved into a small studio on the other side of town. Simple. Minimalist. Mine. For the first few weeks, I felt nothing. A strange, quiet void where my emotions used to be. I think my brain was still processing everything, still trying to catch up to what had happened. But as the weeks passed, something started to shift. I found myself laughing more, sleeping better. I felt lighter, like the weight I'd been carrying for 2 years had finally been lifted. I started going on dates again. Nothing serious, just a few drinks here and there. It felt strange at first, relearning how to meet people, how to smile and make conversation without the heavy cloud of guilt following me around. But it was good. About 6 months later, I got a message from her. Just a text. "I'm doing better. I'm in therapy. I wanted you to know." I read it, sat with it, and then I wrote back, "I'm glad." And that was that. I still think about her sometimes. Not with love, not with regret, but with something closer to compassion. She was broken in ways I couldn't fix, and she needed to fix herself. I wasn't her savior. I was just a person who stayed too long. I learned a lot from that relationship, mostly about boundaries, how to set them, how to enforce them, how to recognize when love is hurting more than it's helping. I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to walk away. And I learned that I deserve to be with someone who walks beside me, not in front of me, not behind me. Someone who carries her own weight and lets me carry mine. Someone who makes me feel like I'm enough. Not because I'm doing everything, but because I'm showing up. That's what I'm looking for now. And maybe that's the best thing that came out of all of this. So that's the whole story. The 2-month ultimatum, the breakdowns, the love bombing, the pneumonia, the final goodbye, and the strange, sad peace I found on the other side. I don't believe in perfect endings. I don't think there's a version of this story where we both walked away happy, but I do believe in honest endings. And this one, for all its messiness, is honest. If you're in a relationship that feels like it's slowly draining you, if you're carrying someone who refuses to walk, I want you to know that it's okay to stop carrying them. It's not selfish. It's survival. You can love someone and still walk away. You can care about their well-being and still protect your own. You can give everything you have and still decide it's not enough. Because sometimes love isn't about staying. Sometimes love is about having the courage to let go. Thanks for listening.